Dara got off first. Dara looks real strong up in lane 7.
Outstanding victory for the Lady Gators.
13 years ago, my position here at the Coral Springs Aquatic Complex was administrative assistant to the director. And this very tall woman comes in.
And I said, excuse me, I wanted to find out about your swim programs.
So I pointed to our rack of flyers with all of our different programs in it.
And I didn't tell her how old I was. I didn't tell her I was pregnant. And she says, have you ever swum any swim meets before? And I said, yeah, a couple.
I referred her to our master's program, which is for swimmers over 18. And she read through it. Pretty soon she said, well, I'd really like to swim with Michael Loberg. I'm sure I raised my eyebrows. You don't ask to swim with Michael, he invites you to swim with him.
And she's like, all right, look, here's a piece of paper. Why don't you write down if you have any accomplishments on this piece of paper, and I will give it to the coach, and he can decide what group you're in. And I'm like, okay, so I'm writing, and she said, all my accomplishments. Finally, after about 15 minutes, I folded it up, and I give it to her.
And so when Michael came in, he was at the copier behind me, and I was at my desk, and I gave him the note. He turned around, I think he was pale, and he said, Dara Torres was here? That's what it says.
I have always been competitive my whole life.
We have to be first in car line, first at the light. My mom, she has a need for speed, definitely.
I hate to fail more than I love to win.
She never likes to lose. Oh.
Dara Torres, a come from behind, moved her team from third to first.
When I started at University of Florida, my mentality was to always do more than anyone else, because I thought that that would make me best.
Dara Torres, national points for the University of Florida.
But what you see in the awards and the medals and the numbers and the records is much different than what actually reality was. But when I have a challenge in front of me, I go for it, and there's no going back.
Dara Torres looks really good right now. New American record for Torres.
One of the more amazing stories in Olympic history.
She was more fit at 41 than she had been at 21.
I think she's totally unique. I don't think we've had anybody have a career with that kind of longevity who's stopped, come back.
Dara isn't just a remarkable sports story. She's a lifestyle story.
Stop, come back.
You look at the whole picture, and it's remarkable.
Stop, come back. It's incredible.
And it's probably never going to be duplicated, ever.
When I retired from swimming, the numerous times that I did, I never had the intentions of getting back into the pool, but I missed being one with the water. There's something that's always been peaceful with the water and me, and that's the feeling I always got since I was a kid, and that's one of the reasons why I always stuck with swimming.
Whatever the boys did, she wanted to do, and that's how she got into swimming.
Growing up, there were 6 of us, 4 boys and 2 girls. She was second to the last. If we were out in the backyard playing basketball, you know, she would have to beat us in a horse. It was always a pretty competitive household.
I've never had dolls, no dresses. I was the biggest tomboy there was growing up.
My mom took us to the YMCA to sign us up for swimming, and you know, before you knew it, Dara said, oh, I want to try.
I would be in the bleachers watching them with my mom because I was so young, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And so my mom finally said, gosh, you know, I better get Dara in the pool too. So I started in the YMCA program, and I loved it. I remember breaking some of the records that were up on the wall, and I thought that was just so cool, and having my name up there, and then the local paper coming and doing a little piece on me.
So it all started when she was 7. And in the beginning, she was known as a drop-dead sprinter. I mean, she was quick. And we took her to the Nationals when she was 13, and the following year, when she was 14, we thought Dara would do well because of her qualifying time, but Jill Sturkle, the defending champion, was undefeated in 4 years of collegiate competition. So going in to think we're going to win, that was pretty slim.
My first impression of Dara was a real young, sporty little kid, just running around without a care in the world. But I do remember every time competing against her, understanding that, you know, game on, you know.
I was up on the starting blocks against my true idol, Jill Sturkle, who was 21 and I was 14.
Jill was a big, strong girl, and Jill was like this, and Dara was like that.
In the final, she goes to that split leg start that she's famous for, and we'll see what she does right now.
Dara got off first.
Everybody knew she was talented, but that race really opened everybody's eyes.
Jill Sturkle has been upset. Look at Torres. Look at that expression. She did it.
Dara went from nowhere when she was a freshman in high school to national champion.
Dara, you've beaten the queen of the American 50. You've got to feel good at this point.
I really do. I was really trying to get her. She's been winning all the 50s, and I just wanted to get her.
She was probably one of the most talented people I'd ever seen swim. Natural raw talent. Her speed was so effortless. You knew if she could put it together mentally, she could be one of the best of the best.
She was definitely a piece of work. I got to know Dara just because our team and her team were attending the same meets when she was in high school.
I met with Mark Schubert, and he said, look, we have a brand new sprint program going on. We have a lot of college guys coming in. And I'm like, ooh, college guys coming in and, you know, training with me for the '84 Olympics. You know, would you be interested in that? I said, well, you know, I need to talk to my mom and then eventually my dad. I didn't think that my dad would have an issue with me being away from home. His biggest issue was schooling. Mark really had to sell that I'd be able to keep up with my studies if I was in Mission Viejo training and going to school there. And so my mom and I talked about it and thought it'd be best if Mark came down and spoke to my dad about it, and we thought we'd throw him under the bus and let him do it instead of me.
So I remember the day that I drove up to Beverly Hills to meet him, and I remember I'd been to Dara and her mom's home, but I hadn't been to the dad's home. It was a huge mansion with lions out front, and I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But he was very cordial. He asked me a number of questions, and you know, he said, I'm comfortable with this.
I was so excited to be on this team because it was a team that I always looked up to growing up and seeing the depth and how good they were.
Everybody on the team loved her. It was fun. It was challenging. It was hard to get her to be serious. I think mainly because she knew she had talent.
And there's Dara Torres. Look for her to go out ahead of the field.
But I think when she made the Olympic team in '84 on the relay, I think that's when it really dawned on her that she was going to have to do a lot more to accomplish what she wanted to accomplish on the Olympic level.
With my first Olympics in '84, I knew it was a big deal, but you have to remember I was 17 years old. I'm this punk kid, just kind of not really realizing what's going on. And so there's Ronald Reagan giving a speech to the whole entire Olympic team.
Celebrating the 23rd Olympiad of the modern era, I declare open the Olympic Games of Los Angeles.
And, you know, Patrick Ewing and Michael Jordan want to walk by, and there's Mary Lou Retton and Carl Lewis. You're like, oh my gosh. And it's like, wait a minute, like I made the team too and I'm here. Did not hit me.
Right now we're going to go back again to the swimming stadium. More competition coming up. It's a women's relay race. Should be good.
I had no idea so many people were coming to watch swimming. I mean, we were lucky if we got 100 people to watch, and usually it was your teammates and your parents, and that was it. I remember lifting up the tent and sort of like peeking under and looking, and I'm like, oh my God. And I went red, and I got hot, and I wasn't focused. I was so worried about like what was going on that I really wasn't in my zone.
Dara Torres not swimming as fast as predicted. Looks a little bit sluggish out there. She'll only swim twice. And if she doesn't swim well this morning, the coaches always have the option to put somebody else on the relay.
All of a sudden there was talk about taking me off the relay for swimming in the final. And I thought, well, how can they do that? We went back to the dorms, and I was rooming with Jill Sturkle, and we started doing puzzles together.
We're laughing and giggling and just taking the weight off of the situation. You know, I could see that Dara was pretty upset, and it was about getting Dara back to the place, to understanding that, you know, it was one swim. You could stand up 20 minutes later and go 2 seconds faster.
She helped me a lot, and I really appreciated that. And the final decision came that I was going to swim. And we get out there, and I'm ready to go. And I swam my split and did one of my fastest times ever, and we won the gold. And I learned a lot from that.
Dara Torres.
Couldn't believe that I won a gold medal in the Olympics.
You know, you look in the eyes of a young swimmer and kind of get them to understand there's more. There's more for you ahead. Like, I'm done, I'm retiring, but, you know, the world is in front of you, and have at it.
When she got the Olympic gold medal, I think it kind of really lit the Olympic fire for her. And she was like, wow, I'd like to do this again.
Ladies, very fortunate to have a special guest with us today. She is an all-time Gator great, one of the most decorated female swimmers in history. Actually represented the United States in 5 different Olympic Games and garnered 12 Olympic medals. So I hope you all will join me in welcoming back to Gainesville, Dara Torres.
Everybody wanted Dara. Everybody wanted Dara. And the Gators were one of the strongest teams in the NC2As.
You know, about a third of the Olympic team in '84 was from the University of Florida. And I think Dara saw that, and, you know, obviously college swimming was really important here, and we've won some NC2A championships. But the long-term goal was always to get kids to the Olympics and always have kids break American and world records. And I think Dara bought into that.
Coach Reese had come to California to talk to me and try to recruit me to come here.
Dara Torres, a 16-year-old sensation from Beverly Hills, California.
When I came on my recruiting trip during spring break, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's like 75 degrees outside, sunny, and they're not doing that much. And I remember saying, oh, I can handle these workouts, because I was like a drop-dead sprinter.
Dara Torres, of course, the outstanding sprint specialist.
Like, the 50 was my best event. I was lucky to swim 100 if I could, and 200, forget it. But boy, it was a rude awakening for me.
As it turned out, Randy Reese really pushed her more than I did, and I think really turned her into a major international player.
Randy Reese was a tough taskmaster. Number one, he was very innovative. All kinds of stuff that we were doing back there in the early 80s, people didn't do until much later. And I'd almost compare him to a Bill Belichick type guy. He was never satisfied.
Randy was probably the only coach where I ever felt the need to please, because he didn't compliment much, and for him, he saw more potential than what you actually had, and so he expected more of you, and he would let you know that. He wouldn't hold it in.
Dara's trained better than she ever has. She's put in a lot more work at a much higher level, quality level, which we didn't know if she was really capable of doing.
It was very much a big eye-opening experience for me. I remember one of my first training sessions on the football field, and I was dying. I had never done any kind of dryland training like this.
And we were doing these things called wheels, which was kind of like a skateboard, and you put under your knees, and then you would climb up the ramps and stuff. Which is about the hardest thing I think I've ever seen anybody do, you know, and kids hated them.
These were the hardest workouts I'd ever done in my life. The football players could not believe what we were doing. And they would see us out there pulling these sleds and running the stadium stairs, and like, they'd always be like, you guys are crazy. You swimmers are just nuts.
I specifically remember watching the swim team doing the same workouts that the football team was doing. And the swamp was full of heat during the summertime. We used to make jokes. You could see the devil rising up off the ground because of the steam that was coming up off the doggone turf. So It was more than what you can bargain for and could even possibly imagine.
The great thing about being in college is we all were there cheering each other on. You'd see different athletes coming to the swim meets. We would go to the football games.
McGriff in motion. Hand off to Emmitt Smith up the middle to the 10 to the 5. Broke a tackle. Almost got in. He did get in.
I remember the first day that there was a football game. We went to morning practice and we were there for like probably 3.5 hours. Come out and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And there were people with painted orange and blue faces and pom-poms, and I had never been in an environment like that before. So it was really, really sort of different experience for me coming to this small town compared to growing up in Beverly Hills, California. Freshman year was hard for me. Aside from getting used to the atmosphere, I never really had to worry about my weight at all. You know, I was this tall, skinny kid in high school and ate whatever I wanted to eat. And I'll never forget Randy coming up to me after I'd committed and saying, you know, it'd be really great if you lost about 10 pounds before you got to college. I kind of laughed it off because I thought he was kidding. And I get to school and he decides that he wants to start weighing us. I said, well, why? I don't understand. I've never had a weight problem. Why do you want me to lose weight? And he said, well, if you look intimidating on the starting blocks, your competitors will be intimidated and then they won't swim as fast. You know, I'm 18 years old. I'm like, okay, you know. And so I started to try to watch what I was eating. What ended up happening is I developed an eating disorder, and it basically sort of dominated my life the whole entire time I was here.
She's the fastest swimmer in the world.
We were all kind of part of it. But back then, I mean, we would weigh them right on the pool deck. And I'd have girls get on the scale and they'd almost start crying. And they'd ask me to, you know, fudge a little bit. And I'm like, no, I'm not fudging. I work for Randy, and this is what he does. And so we're doing it.
I think that in defense of Randy, coaches thought they were doing the right thing. Didn't have any idea what kind of damage was happening.
Back in the 80s, you didn't really talk about eating disorders, and he was a male coach, I was a female swimmer. You didn't really talk about those things.
In some sports, wrestling, gymnastics, in some cases swimming, the coaches and trainers demand an almost oppressive physical regimen. We're not talking about Major League Baseball players or football players, we're talking about kids in their teens. And that would have an emotional effect on anybody, let alone someone who's still developing physically and emotionally.
I was exhausted and I was overtraining and I just wasn't myself. And one day I was in the girls' dorm and went into the bathroom and I heard something going on. I'm like, what is, you okay? And they're like, yeah. And they were throwing up and I didn't know what that was. And I said, are you sick? Like, no, I'm just trying to make weight. And I said, well, what do you mean you're trying to make weight? And so she continued to explain to me that you can eat whatever you want and then, you know, throw up and you will make your weight. And I was like, oh, that's great. And so that's how I got started in the downfall of having an eating disorder. And then it became a pattern for me to binge and purge. I am such a competitive person, and having had an eating disorder during that time in my life sort of overtook my whole psyche, my body, like everything about me, because I knew that having this eating disorder wasn't going to make me the best that I could be, but I had no way to stop it. And that really led me into a dark place and kept me in a dark place.
We knew she was unhappy. I remember her telling me if I gained weight, if I gained a pound or 2 pounds, there was a limit, then we can't come home for the Christmas holiday. I knew something serious was going on, but I really couldn't talk to her about it. You know, she'd get really moody. It was a very, very difficult time.
I would go home on holidays and my mom would have a big buffet of food set out and I would literally salivate at the food and not eat. And then when my family would push me or my mom would say, Dara, you have to eat, you're like, you're too thin, I would eat a little bit. She'd say, you're not eating enough. And then I would take a whole plate of it, eat, and then go purge. I knew it wasn't right. I knew I was hurting myself because I could feel it, but you basically get into denial.
When I heard about it, I was sickened. She is so strong-willed and so mentally strong and focused that I can't believe that this guy would have that kind of influence over her. you know, that there was no oversight by the university or whatever to see that this was going on, this basically mental abuse.
I had no clue. I don't remember her being bulimic, but I'm sure she wasn't going to mention it to me or to Randy. Ignorance is no excuse. I should have probably been more aware of it, but that's kind of how you coached back then. And don't cry about it. And, you know, come in here and do the work and do what we ask you to do. And if you do, you're going to swim great, you know, so it's worth it.
I look back on that and I realize, just imagine what I would have been at if I was actually at my best.
Dara looks real strong up in lane 7.
Dara in the black cap will reach the wall first. Outstanding victory for the Lady Gators.
Dara is one of the best swimmers that we had, and she was a beautiful person inside and out. Obviously a hard worker, dedicated competitor.
We have the best running back in the country.
3 touchdowns for Emmitt Smith on the day.
It was kind of a no-brainer that he was going to be the male athlete of the year. And then when Dara gets picked, it was really huge, obviously, here at the university and in Gainesville.
I truly was honored to be Athlete of the Year with Emmitt Smith, who went on to play for the Dallas Cowboys and have an incredible pro career too. And all those things are great, but I wasn't a happy person. And I think I always wanted to please people and have people think very highly of me, but if they knew I had an eating disorder or was binging and purging, they would think bad of me.
Athletics can be cruel in the sense that it can be punitive and abusive at times. That stuff leaves a mark, which Dara had to deal with through a good portion of her life.
The reason why I'm talking about this to you guys is because there are a lot of young women who have issues like this, whether it's being bulimic, anorexic, or just having a fear of food because you don't want to gain weight. And I think the biggest advice I would give any of you, if any of you are experienced or know anyone who's experienced it, is to don't be afraid to talk about it. It took me about maybe 5 years to admit it. It obviously interfered with my everyday life. It interfered with my swimming. I went to the Seoul Olympics in '88 during my junior year and just swam horrible. Like I was ranked #1 going into the Olympics, and I got 7th at the games, and just swam really poorly on the relays. It's just a bad thing to be dealing with.
Well, I think any man or woman that experiences an eating disorder suffers from it, and it affects their performance. Fortunately, her being her, Dara may have lost an opportunity in '88, but I wouldn't say she lost her peak opportunity because she just continued to get better and better.
After I graduated from college, my mom was sort of on me about seeing a general practitioner. So I go to see this doctor and we do the whole checkup. She's like, yeah, you seem like you're doing pretty well. She says, but I just have some questions to ask you. Just normal questions. Then all of a sudden there's like, do you have an eating disorder? I said, no. Going to the next questions. You sure don't have an eating disorder? No. I get back to my apartment and I had such guilt for lying to this lady that I picked up the phone and I said, I'm sorry, I lied to you. I do have an eating disorder. It's not a quick cure when you talk about it, but at least you're starting the process of healing. If I look back on my career or my life, is there anything I would change? Absolutely not, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through that. Even though it was one of the darkest places in my life, it made me who I am.
Hi, I'm Dara Torres, and I'm a broadcasting major at the University of Florida. The Gators will be right back to shoot for the national championship right here on ESPN after these messages. Do I get the job?
I knew Dara a little bit as an Olympic swimmer in '88. That was my first Olympics for NBC. But she had a degree in telecommunications from the University of Florida, and she wound up working at NBC.
The first time that I retired was actually after I graduated from college. I was done. I had finished my swimming career and started working at NBC Sports. I'd interned there and really no intentions of coming back.
I think my dad was also pressuring her to retire. For him, it was like, okay, you had your day, you know, it's time to get serious in life and get a job.
It really plays a lot with your psyche when you do retire, because you go into a little bit of a depression because you're in a situation where you're in the unknown. What happened is I was watching an interview of Brian Boitano, the Olympic figure skater, talking about making a comeback, and for some reason that word resonated in my head.
I think the basic reason I would come back is because I still can physically do it.
I think I just missed the sport from being out of it, from, you know, retiring not really on the top of my game to getting right into the workforce and sort of being out of my element.
In the back of her mind, she had that eating away at her, that, you know, God, I didn't that great a soul. I have to redeem myself, you know, I'm a fighter.
It was probably about a year before Olympic trials that I had decided to move back down to University of Florida and train there for the '92 Olympics. There was a standout swimmer there named Nicole Hazelit. She could not have been nicer, was a great training partner, and she literally welcomed me with open arms.
To me, it was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what to think. You know, I thought, wow, I get to swim with Dara. As a kid, I certainly wanted to be like her in the pool, and to have somebody you're that strongly competing against in the water with you day in and day out, it can't not make you better.
The 1992 Olympic team in Barcelona was my first head coaching assignment, so I was very excited. Not only was I happy from the standpoint of her performances and her ability in the pool, but I was happy because of her leadership.
She leads by example, and you know, she just has unique friendships and relationships with everybody on the team. Dara is generous. She is smart. She is outgoing and never met a stranger, and if she wants to meet someone or talk to someone, she's gonna do it. So she knew what a fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger I was, and she knew him, of course. You know, why wouldn't she?
I remember she had an Arnold poster on her door back in Gainesville, and I had known Arnold, and so I had called him up when we were at the airport heading to Barcelona.
So sure enough, he shows up in the Olympic Village, and I was in my room and kind of wake up to hear people and sort of all these voices.
And he goes up to her, he's like, Nicole, wake up, you know? And she's like, what? And he goes, Nicole, wake the blank up. And she turned around, she was like, oh.
I'm literally in like t-shirt or whatever I'm sleeping in. I look a mess. And he comes in, he gives me a big hug. She's standing there so giddy. You know, and that goes to show the types of things that she'll do for people. I mean, it's one of the best stories of my life, really.
It was just so much fun to be able to do that for her after, you know, she was so nice to me to sort of kind of take me in and let me, you know, train with her, knowing that we were training for the same events. So I think we'll always have that sort of connection. And then we both swam the relay together.
I just remember being next to Dara, screaming, cheering, watching that final 50 as they're coming back toward us.
The United States does it in a new world record.
In '92 in Barcelona. I ended up not making the team in an individual event, which was really what I wanted to do, which I had not done in my 2 previous Olympic Games. And so I'm like, you know what? It wasn't meant for me to win an individual medal in any color. I'm 25 years old. I was called the grandmother of the team. I need to just move on with my life and get a career going.
Yeah, I am. I'm retiring, but I said that after '88, so, you know, never say never.
Started doing modeling to make some money to hopefully get into television. Being such a tomboy, when I got asked to do the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, I couldn't wait. Not because I get to get all dolled up and be in it, but because my brother's friends, who I was dying to go to the prom with, or asked them to the prom, would see me in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue with Elle McPherson and Kathy Allen. That's the one reason why I wanted to do it, is for my brother's friends to see that, oh, wow, she became a woman. All of a sudden, I got all these offers, and then TV offers started to come in, and that's sort of how I started my TV career.
Whatever you decide to do this summer, be safe, wear the right equipment, but most importantly, have fun. For The Deuce, I'm Dara Torres, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I think all of us thought that she'd have a career in television or in modeling. She winds up being the first athlete in the SI swimsuit issue. She obviously had a lot of qualities that would have led to success. So we were all surprised when she declared her intention to get back in the water in 2000.
You would think that any kind of competitiveness I had would be long gone at that point in time. And then one day, I'm running and this older lady starts coming up on me and I'm like, what the heck? She's like passing me, and I just started to feel these juices flow of being competitive. And I thought, wow, you know, like, should I do this?
And we all think, there's no way this can work out. I mean, go for it. It can't hurt you. It's a good thing. Go for it. But we probably won't see you in Sydney. We were wrong. Not the last time we'd be wrong about Dara Torres.
When she called you, Richard, and said she was thinking of this, your reaction was what?
I was excited because I knew she was talented, and I knew if she dedicated herself to something, it could be real special.
It was fun watching her from a distance training with Richard Quick. I knew she had a chance to shine. But swimming is changing all the time. And I think Dara kind of came in the middle when it changed a lot.
The stroke had changed, the technique had changed, the swimsuits had changed, everything had changed. So it was sort of a little bit different for me. And I'm thinking about my shoulders, my knees, like, can my body do this? I haven't swum in 7 years.
There was a lot more emphasis on physiology and biomechanics, and that's where coaches became better educated. And I think Richard did a great job of changing her stroke and making her successful again.
There was a lot of texture to Dara's story leading into the games in Sydney. 33 is a very advanced age for a world-class swimmer. And the rivalry with Jenny Thompson. This was a truly interesting and fascinating Olympic story.
Both of them were striving for Richard Quick's attention. And they're both very type A, very competitive, and they both had been kind of the queen bee of the programs they were in.
The competition with Dara, has that helped you go faster?
I think it has. It's pushed me a lot. It's put me out of my comfort zone and made me know I have to go really fast to win.
I understood in one sense that, you know, there was some jealousy there, but you can't always be training so hard every single workout you go to. And so you can't have an Olympic final in every practice. And I started completely beating her in practices, and she is not happy.
It was a little bit difficult at times on the team in 2000, but I was the men's coach, so I didn't have to deal with it. That was Richard. But he obviously did a masterful job.
Well, pageantry and goodwill was yesterday's story, replaced by rivalry and good, meaning fast times today.
The 2000 Olympics were kind of crazy. I'll never forget the 100 freestyle. Jenny's a fierce competitor.
Let's see who has the lead out the turn. Torres was third and Thompson was fourth.
When we touched the wand, like the whole crowd goes, you just kind of hear them like sort of gasping.
Was second, look at that. Tie, it appears, between Dara Torres and Jenny Thompson for the bronze. How ironic is that?
It was insane. All I remember was her looking at me and just shaking her head like, really?
We had to share the podium together, which was obviously very awkward. But when the Olympics were over, I got a phone call from Mark Spitz. He's like, I know who won, because I was sitting at the Omega time table, and what happens is the person who actually had the faster time, their name appears first, because they only go to the 100th of a second, but the actual time system goes to the 1,000th and the 10,000th or whatever. So my name came up first and I won. And so I was like, yes, and I never told anyone that, but it actually kind of felt good that I had beaten her.
Competition has begun with the swimmers' fight to climb the medal stand.
2 days later, it was the last race for the women at the Sydney Olympic Games, and it was the 400 medley relay.
You could be witnessing one of the greatest relays in history right now. How appropriate is it that Dara Torres swims the final leg? Gold again for the American women.
We had just won our last medal, and this reporter's there, and he stops me and he said, are you going to do this again? And take another 7 years off and come back at 41 and try for an Olympic team. And I seriously looked at him, I said, that is really the dumbest question I have ever heard. They're just nuts, crazy. I really told myself in 2005, when I got pregnant, that I would continue working out. I wasn't gonna eat for two people. I was just gonna really take care of my body and take care of the baby that was growing in me. Now, I hadn't swum in like 5.5 years. I thought this would be great, I'm gonna go swim. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to find a coach.
Dara never acted like a celebrity. She didn't say, don't you know me? Nothing. She was so gracious. And so when Michael came in,
she gave me the note and I read the name and I said, I started laughing. I said, do you know who that is? And she had no idea who that was. And
he said, Dara Torres was here?
Of course I knew who Dara Torres is.
So Michael Loberg ended up calling me, who was the head coach for Coral Springs. And he said, we have a great master's program. Now mind you, when you're used to swimming at the elite level, master's is considered old. So still had not told him I was pregnant because I didn't want him to hold that against me. The one thing my doctor had said to me is, if you're gonna work out, if you have a hard time breathing, that means your baby will have a hard time breathing. I said, okay.
It's a little crazy actually, because the day that she had Tessa, she came and swam. She did her workout and went straight to the hospital. And then 2 weeks after she had Tessa, she was back in the water.
So I went to the Masters Nationals here, which we are hosting in Coral Springs. I made sure that I breastfed, so I was nice and light in the water. And, I swam okay. And then David, Tessa's dad, got the bug swimming too. He hadn't swum since college. And next thing you know, we're taking Tessa with us to the Masters World Championships. Somehow when I swam the 50, I qualified for Olympic trials. And people would come up to me and say, God, wouldn't it be great to see a 40-year-old competing in Beijing? I really quickly realized that that was their passive-aggressive way of saying, you need to be in the Olympics and represent us middle-aged people. And by the end of the meet, I was like, all right, I'll do it.
I don't know if I ever asked her why she was making that comeback. I think probably if I had to answer that myself, because she knew she could. And she liked to prove people wrong.
When I said I was going to make a comeback, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to do it. How would I balance motherhood and being the best parent I could be? How much guilt would I have doing that?
I think it was a difficult time for Dara to have a new baby, but also her dad was very sick.
My dad was really not doing well with his colon cancer, and I knew he was probably going to pass away, and he's very old school. I didn't think he'd be able to understand how I could be a great mom and also go for an Olympics. It wasn't important to him, the swimming for me. He just wanted me to have a nice life and get a good education and start a family. So I never got a chance to tell my dad that I went for the Olympics, but I think that was probably for the better, because I think one of the reasons why he held on for as long as he did was to see me have a daughter.
He couldn't have been more proud than he was of her. It was a difficult time, but she doesn't give up.
I feel like he was there with me as I was doing this and going through this process.
And she knew she had already, thought it out clearly and felt that she could handle it and wanted to go try, and worked out the situation with the coaching, how she gets sponsored. And she did it.
So the first thing I did is I took Tessa with me and I flew up to New York, and I met with Mike Bloomberg. I had met him because I was on the committee to try to get the Olympics to New York in 2012, so I had stayed in touch with him. And I said, I'm actually thinking about making a comeback, and I wanted to know if you'd be up for sponsoring me.
I was sort of flattered that she asked. 41's pretty young to me. What you would call age, I would call experience and accomplishment. Dara is the great American dream. She looks the part, she acts the part, and she is the part.
The important thing for me was to find a team of people who all had the same goal, which was to get an Olympic gold medal.
Hello. Just checking up on you here.
Dara just left no stone unturned in her later years of her career. Nutrition-wise, strength-wise, psychological, physical swimming training. and really had it mapped out with the coaches, a program that allowed everything to happen and come together in the right way.
Okay,
Then you might do sprints first and then some easy swimming or the other way.
I was going to swim meets and doing times that I had never done before. And I was like, wow, what is this?
Inevitably, when somebody does something that extraordinary, and when they exceed personal bests from when we perceive they should have been in their prime, then there's going to be speculation about doping.
I was absolutely flabbergasted that anyone would even assume that I was making this comeback and not doing it the legal way to do it. I was just heartbroken.
Well, you know, it's literally unprecedented, Dara, for a 41-year-old to swim at this level. I mean, from both an aerobic conditioning standpoint and a strength standpoint, you just don't see 41-year-olds able to do what she's doing, especially. She's laid out of competition for 6 years. She had a baby. She's had 2 surgeries in the last 8 months, and she has been very forthright. But there's enough reason there to just wonder if it's too good to be true.
I just think people wanted a reason to think that what she was doing wasn't possible. And listen, if you're a coach and you got a 16-year-old that's up and coming and Dara's on her 4th or 5th comeback and beating your kid, you know, there's always going to be haters out there. But I know her. I wouldn't, never. She would never do it. Never.
I would not have done anything with her if there was the slightest doubt in my mind that she was not clean.
I was real clear with all the athletes, given the sophisticated testing methods that we currently use, there is a significant chance and likelihood that if someone's cheating, they're going to be caught.
And I spoke to Michael at length about this, and we decided, you know what? I want to be transparent. I want people to know I am doing this the right way.
She said, tell me what I can do in order to show my commitment to clean sport.
And I said, take hair samples, take urine, take saliva, do whatever you have to do to show that I'm doing this the right way.
Torres has had to respond to allegations by some sports columnists and commentators that her accomplishments may be tainted by banned substances. So far, her tests have come back clean.
She immediately said, not only have I gone through all the testing protocols, but if you can think of anything else, or you want to test me every day, go ahead and do it. And she's always been clean. Maybe she's just a freak of nature. You know, that happens sometimes. Babe Ruth had a big pot belly and trained on hot dogs and hit 714 home runs. There are freaks of nature.
She seems to have physical attributes that make her the perfect swimmer. She's tall, she's lean, her body is very balanced, long hands, long fingers, long feet.
Here's a 41-year-old woman. People talk about a six-pack. She had like a dozen-pack. It was like, this is beyond incredible.
Her body is a specimen. I mean, everybody talks about Michael Phelps, and he is. He's physically built to swim. I mean, if somebody was making a swimmer, there you go. But Dara's kind of the female version of that.
Dara Torres, she can't wait for a shot at her 5th Olympic team to show her little girl, just 2 years old, just how good she is.
I was so nervous at Olympic trials because I felt like I had so much pressure from all these middle-aged people. I didn't know how I was going to try to live up to everyone's expectations.
Dara Torres in lane 5 is leading this field right now as they go along. Well, you've got a berth in Beijing, Dara.
I didn't realize how many people it really had touched and inspired.
I don't think it's really hit me yet that I'm on a 5th Olympic team.
Dara, yeah, well, as I call her, my mom.
Well, Michael was in here earlier, and he kind of referred to you as his, which I guess would be his second mom. What can you say about that?
I like to refer to it as a big sister to my teammates.
All of a sudden, the Today Show wanted me. I had to go on Jay Leno. All of a sudden, I was being pulled in all these different directions.
Great story coming out of Omaha is that concerning Dara Torres, who's heading to her 5th Olympics at 41.
Every now and then there's an achievement in the world of sports that isn't just great, but almost unbelievable.
So there were a lot of different things I kind of had to deal with really quickly, knowing that I had made the Olympic team. One of the hardest things going to the Beijing Games was the fact that my coach had developed a rare blood disorder. And I actually had to see the team psychologist because that was a very, very tough time for me. So it was so much different than doing it in 1984 at my first Olympic Games at 17. I had such a different appreciation for everything.
Dara Torres, she sat out 2 Olympics, the 96 games and the 04 games. That's what's so incredible about this journey.
In the semifinals of the 50 freestyle in Beijing, there was a girl who was ranked #2 in the world. I was ranked 5th, whose suit ripped.
Wait a second, something's wrong here. Not sure what the problem there is.
I said, hey, there's a girl that was in our heat, Teresa Alston, while we're supposed to be in one of the lanes over there that's empty. She's not here, and her suit ripped. Is there any way that you could hold up the race?
What an amazing case of sportsmanship.
Mark Schubert comes up to me afterwards. He's like, I didn't know what you were doing. You just like walked off and, you know, just started yelling at me. And he's like,
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, what the hell are you doing? You're the one that's trying to win this. But it was so obvious that it was just such a fantastic demonstration of sportsmanship.
That to me speaks volumes of her character and her integrity. You know, some people would just say, oh, screw it, you know, let's just go.
I probably wouldn't. I would have cared less. Couldn't have cared less, I would say. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but you know, but that is Dara.
So much always seems to swirl around Dara Torres, and she just continues to handle moment after moment.
The way I looked at it was that if that happened to me, I'd hope that someone would help me, #1. #2, I'm a mom, and I can only imagine what her parents must have been thinking. And #3, why would I want to compete with anyone but the best in my event?
We want to remind our viewers that we have lots of marquee events to get to. Dara Torres swims in 2 finals. So Dara has a very legitimate shot at winning gold in the 50 meters. It's her last individual event at an Olympics. Much of America is pulling for her.
I start marching out for the race, and people say, well, what do you think about when you're marching out in an Olympic final? And I said, honestly, I was really looking for the U.S. basketball team because the guys said they would come watch me swim.
And she was kind of scanning the stands to see if they were there. And they were. LeBron, Kobe, this whole star-studded group. Because for that period of time, Dara Torres was pretty much on equal standing with them. She was one of the stars of those Olympics.
And then I see the U.S. team, the NBA players, sitting there, and I'm like, yes, they're here, they're gonna watch me. Now I'm really psyched. I get on the starting blocks, they say, take your marks, and I'm off.
Oh my God, I remember, I felt like I was on pins and needles watching. I felt kind of almost like I was there at the race because I had like those butterflies and that nauseous, nervous feeling you would get before you compete.
It's a 50-meter free. You dive in the pool, and if you blink, it's over with. It happens quickly. And it looks to the naked eye like a dead heat.
Torres getting some pressure from Stephen Malor. Stephen's coming on below Torres, and it's gonna be Stephen just getting ahead of Dara Torres with a silver. 1/100th of a second.
I get to the wall, I turn around, and I put my goggles up, and I see a #2 by my name. Now, the good thing about swimming is if you go into water, you can cuss as much as you want and no one hears you. And I just kind of put my head back and I thought, oh God, 1/100th of a second, what could I have done?
I just wanted her to win so badly, so badly. Kind of stinks that she never got an individual gold medal. I mean, 100th of a second, you can't even comprehend how close that is.
I always thought that would haunt me for the rest of my life because I am so competitive and I hate to lose. When I got back and saw my daughter, I realized that, you know what? I have to be okay with it, and I have to let my daughter at some point know that it's okay to get second place if you gave it everything you had.
So I don't really remember much, but she always goes to try her best in everything, and I'm proud of her.
It was hard to feel disappointment because I was so proud of what she had accomplished. But I was also looking at it as a coach. So as soon as she touched the wall, even though she was second, I was thinking about the relay. It was one event after another, and I knew she was going to be disappointed. So I went and told her I wanted her to have the fastest split in history in the relay.
Torres giving it her all after the silver in the 50.
And she did. And it was fabulous. And I think coming back from that and doing that on the relay for the USA, I was probably as proud of her as I've ever been.
The whole world was so proud of her, you know, for what she did and what she accomplished, and the fact that she inspired so many women, you know, and middle-aged women, to me, that's worth its weight in gold right there.
She was one of the authentic heroes and one of the most admired competitors to come out of those games. Perfect note on which to conclude and finally, once and for all, walk away.
How could you not be proud of that? But life goes on, right? That must have driven her now to do other things.
Hey everyone, I am here in the CBS studios, getting ready to shoot We Need to Talk.
Keon, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and talking about this very important issue. We really appreciate it.
Moving forward in my life, I have a lot of things keeping me busy with Bar Method and TV show and sponsors and just a lot of stuff going on. And you know, I asked, well, do I miss swimming? I actually don't. I think I'm kind of living life more now than I ever have with my daughter in my life and, you know, trying to deal with a teenager.
So do you have a lot of homework tonight? Yeah.
And just fill my life with other things that become fulfilling to me.
I think it's so amazing because she really broke down the walls and, you know, changed things for swimming. I hope that young swimmers nowadays coming up kind of know her story. When you look at it from start to finish, too good to be true, but not at all surprising if you know Dara.
I thought I was competitive. Tessa is ultra competitive.
We play rock, paper, scissors, and she always beats me, but there's like just one time when I beat her, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I beat you, and then she's like, another game.
Oh, let's reach you one more. Come on. Yeah, come on.
Yes!
I'll let you win, it's okay.